so that now it's live on Facebook, on YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel. So we can have a discussion on this, because I think this is something that we need to address.
Yeah, like I was saying, man, racism is being, there is something which is being said about racism. But the thing is that, like, I'm listening to a whole lot of people who are saying that there is a whole lot of hijacking that's going on with the agenda itself. And then I've also, like, listened in the international group for GPAN. People are saying that,
Yeah.
white people are coming and just overtaking, and we are allowing them. I think the word is out there against racism, but then the
Yeah.
action itself, we need action. We need
So what
one
are we going
direction
to
of being
do
resolute.
to end racism against Black people throughout the world? Because I know
Very,
that it's just beyond color. The racism against people of African descent is economical. It's because they are seeing us we're very poor. In spite of having a lot of wealth, they just come here in Africa. They take over our land, and we allow them. They take over our natural resources. We allow them. This is the reason why there is a lot of disrespect from the West when they start thinking about Africans, seeing Africans. They have come to believe maybe we are inferior. This is why we just let them take over even us. We are exporting ourselves as labor to build the Europe which is already developed. The best brains are in Europe and America. Dr. Magoma, you can contribute on this topic.
Hello, Daniel.
How are you?
Well, not so well because our
Yeah.
brothers are killed all over.
How can we end racism against Black people throughout the world?
You know that the problem start with African ourselves. Before even you go to discuss about racism in Africa against other nations or against the white supremacy, it seems that not only the racism, the segregation start in Africa itself. As you can see, even in several countries in Africa, there is tribalism. It's almost as equal as racism, that as one race believe that they are super race compared to another race. That's number one. But number two, about African economic being a dependent economy, about African being loaded, about African being only a source of raw material to produce raw material and to produce manpower, but the benefit of that manpower and raw material which are produced in Africa is actually ending up in Western countries. That's number two. But the problem is, we as African, are we ready? We as African, are we ready to make sure that we are taking our continent to the next level? We as African, are we ready to make sure that we protect each other, we love each other, we trade with ourselves? Are we ready? As you can see, if even here in most of the country in Africa, if I, for instance, I tender for certain, let's say, a road construction job, I will not be considered. We consider that most of Black people are not able. Most of Black people are poor. Most of Black people are, all sort of negative things, that negative mentality. The self-hatred is bigger than the white supremacy. We hate ourselves, we kill ourselves, we ignore ourselves, and we believe that we don't have anything which is better compared to the other people in the world.
This is very sad, because without regaining self-pride, and the moment we begin recognizing ourselves as equal humans, there's no way that any other race will give us equality, because I see this issue of racism as something that begins with self. The way we treat other races when they come to Africa, you will see that the white man, when he lands in Africa, black people literally worship the white man, and whichever word he speaks, they take it to the bank. And this kind of belief in the white man is what has led to this feeling of racial inferiority. We have come to accept that the white man is superior just because he exploited us for more than 400 years. And because of labor and the natural resources that he extracted from Africa, he's now rich and wealthy. We have come to believe that the white man is superior, but in actual sense, he's not superior. And this is the kind of education that Africans need throughout the world. They need to start having a sense of recognition and a sense of pride, being proud of who they are. Because if we are not proud of who we are, we have even Africans who are bleaching themselves. Then we are not going to be able to equal the white man in any sense. Because if we start looking at ourselves and say being black is just being inferior, black is a symbol of a devil, on what those kind of lies that the white preachers told the Africans. If we continue believing on those lies, then there is no way that we are going to liberate Africa. As Marcus Garvey said, liberate the minds of men and liberate the bodies of men. In order for us to liberate Africa, we must start by liberated thinking. And this means we have to discard the slavish mindset that makes us believe that we have to import everything from Europe, China, or any other country. That makes us believe that we are incapable of innovating whatever we need to establish an independent and prosperous African nation. We have to completely eradicate such kind of negativity that you talked about, because if we drive negative energies, we will never develop as an African nation. We have the natural resources, but utilizing them requires leadership that really thinks in the interest of Africa. But as you know, in Africa, we have leadership that doesn't care about the people. They just care about the personal interests, what they're gaining from the contracts that they're signing. And these contracts, they're giving away our natural resources that we need for our own development. And then they tell us this is foreign investment, this is a partnership. This partnership has become the 21st century colonialism, and is stripping away the African power to be able to be economically independent. The current crisis in the African Development Bank shows that these capitalist establishments, they come as investors, but they just want to take over and even manipulate African institutions. And we should not allow that to happen. We need to ensure that we have an African Development Bank that does not rely on foreign investors, that is fully supported by the African people and the African nations. This is the only way I believe we can be self-reliant, and it should be the African Bank that should be printing the currency for African countries, the African Central Bank. Actually, if we have an African Central Bank, Africa will start realizing the progress that has been stolen away by these Western countries and the Far East countries. Do you have any other thing to add regarding on how we can end racism? Because this is something that is everywhere. Even West Papua, Indonesia has been calling West Papuans monkeys just because they're black.
Well, if I can weigh in, President, when you talk to racism, we've been discussing that it's all in unity. Once we are united, we will have a voice which can be heard. Right now, because of the disunity that has been created throughout colonization and through the education that we have, we are basically an inferior people. When you say that we worship white people, it's because, well, that's what we've been taught to do from a very early age, all throughout our education, all throughout Africa. The white man is superior. So we've internalized that. It's going to take a lot to actually deliver our people, because we firstly need to deliver the people before we can deliver ourselves. Because as Africa, we need to bind together and deliver ourselves. But right now, we've got those of us who are saying that we don't have a problem. There are people in the middle class who don't see any problem. Their struggle of a month to month, to them, that is life. When, like, they don't understand the kind of exploitation that goes into the whole mix. So what I'm saying is that we need to unite. We need to work around finding organizations like GPAN, or actually making it a point that each and every African, each and every Pan African come into that, and we actually preach the gospel of unity.
Certainly, I agree with you. This has to be a continuous effort, re-education of the African, because I know for a very long time Africans have been miseducated, and this is why it is becoming very difficult to convince Africans that they're equal to any other race, because they look at themselves and say, our children are working at drugs. How can we be equal with the white man? And this kind is because of the education system that was inherited during the colonial period. And this education system is what is making Africans have this inferiority complex. So it will really require re-education, because Africans have been miseducated. And this is where Pan-Africanism comes in as a force, as a liberation force for the African continent. And when we are talking about unification of Africa, we are not just talking about unification of the landmass. We are talking about total unification of Africa and unification of all people of African descent, regardless their geographical location. Dr. Derek, if you have anything, the final comments, you can just unleash the final comments, and then we end the broadcast.
Thank you, Daniel. On my final remarks, I would like to suggest several things. Apart from the unification of African continent, a part of economic unification, a part of having African central bank, and which after having African central bank, that it means that in the future we're going to have African single currency, that we're going to have a single economy in Africa. But another thing, it has to be in education. Our education system in most of the country, our education system are not preparing our young African brothers and sisters. First of all, to be confident of the knowledge they get, to be confident that after attaining that particular knowledge, they are suitable, they are capable of doing almost everything, because every day now and then they see it's a Chinese who are building our roads, it's a Chinese company who are building our airports. It's other nationalities, other people. We don't have problem for them building our roads and whatsoever, but we need to make sure our education will be good to equip our youngsters to have a proper knowledge, to have a proper tool, to have a proper weapon, which is education, to make sure that apart from just having a knowledge, but they are confident about the knowledge they have. Because as we speak, most of the time, most of the people, if, for instance, you're attend just a university here in Africa, and somebody come along who attend a university, let's say in Europe or in America, most of the time, some people will consider him or her as the best compared to you who have attended local university here in Africa. But in reality, you might have the best and the good knowledge compared to them. As you can see, most of the people still are using education as a tool to oppress African people. So if we liberate our education system, we're going to prepare very powerful and useful continent for the sake of ourselves and for the sake of our next generations.
Thank you very much for the submission. I absolutely agree with you. We need an education system that inspires Africans to be confident, and an education system that enlightens Africans and equips Africans to be able to solve their own problems. I believe through Pan-African education syllabus, we'll be able to create an education system that integrates the diverse African culture and empowers Africans to solve their own problems, so that we don't study and then after graduating we see the Chinese engineers building our roads, yet we have engineers in Africa. This kind of circus needs to come to an end. When we educate engineers, we need to see them taking charge of Africa, building our roads, building our bridges, so that this money that we were supposed to pay the Chinese contractors ends in the pockets of Africans, and further is used to further develop Africa, because if we pay these African contractors, they'll reinvest the money back into the African community. And we also need to encourage Black people around the world to invest in Black business, support Black banks, because by supporting our own businesses and creating our own businesses, this is the only way that we can be economically free. We cannot be free from the white man when we are depending on the white man for jobs. We are depending him for food, shelter, and clothing, because we don't own even the buildings where we live. This needs to come to an end, and it can only be attained through Black unity in Africa and also in the diaspora. Having a unified African nation is the only hope for the people of African descent around the world. And through our unity, we are going to be very strong, and we'll be able to confront and eradicate racism, and thereby presenting ourselves to the world as equal global force. I believe this is all we need. Thank you very much, Dr. Amagoma, for joining from Tanzania. We have one person there's the representative for Japan, Mozambique. Can you please introduce yourself? This is the United States of Africa YouTube channel. Can you hear us?
Thank you so much. So I'm here representing Japan, Mozambique. But here I have a bit problem of network. It's not
But
very good.
I'm glad today you've been able to join. We are discussing about how we are going to end racism, and we are saying only Black unity is going to eradicate racism. What are your thoughts on this?
No, I say, is it? No, I say no to racism. No to racism. Let's fight against white supremacy and haki too.
Yeah.
This is my presentation about the fighting against racism in Africa and for all Black people.
Thank you very much. Do you have
Yes.
any other comment to make, because we are just winding up?
For now, I have no another comment. I will finish for saying no to racism in Africa and
Okay, thank you very much.
and in diaspora.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.